Zambia's education sector is facing a stern test of credibility. Recent suspension of examinations at primary and secondary school levels as a result of leakage have exposed the education system to ridicule and doubt. Examinations have resumed, but questions remain unanswered. Has the country's education system collapsed? Is this a temporary problem that can be resolved with enhanced effort? Is the Ministry of Education doing enough to find solutions to this problem, which threatens not only to erode confidence in Zambia's education system, but also to derail the economy? My guest this evening, Dr. Felix Phiri, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of General Education. You're watching Sunday Interview, and I'm your host, Grevajo Zulu. Dr. Phiri, welcome to the program.
Good evening, and good evening, viewers.
Now, your ministry is crumbling under the weight of scandals. First, it was misappropriation of funds with close to 80 staff suspended. And now what people are calling the mother of all scams, examination leakage. What happened?
Well, generally, as you have rightfully indicated, the ministry has been challenged in a number of areas. But what the citizens may wish to note is that the fact that we are reading and hearing about these issues is as a result of deliberate attempts, deliberate intentions and moves by government led by the able leadership of His Excellency the President, Mr. Edgar Chagwa, and ensuring that appropriate institutions perform their respective functions. As the case may be, with respect to the members of staff who have, since been set aside, you are aware, Grevazio, that the audit report of 2016 did highlight a number of issues which required, further, which had to be re-looked into by the Office of the Auditor General. So the Ministry of Finance, that is a government wing, did commission a forensic audit. Now I have to state here so that you understand, from where I'm coming from, in the sense that the citizens have to understand that the forensic audit was demanded by government. And therefore, government was concerned and continues to be concerned and required that we collect information that will help understand what went on. With respect to the examination leakage.
Maybe before you move to examinations, I'll ask you one question just on this 80 staff suspended. And people are saying the suspension of junior staff should be an indictment on senior staff like yourselves, who, under your watch, such huge sums of money were siphoned.
Well, indeed, as you rightfully put it, when a matter like that, does happen, you have to go through the entire, system and see exactly what transpired. Of course, when it involves government expenditure, I'm sure you are aware that the position of Permanent Secretary is a constitutional office bearer. And what the Constitution indicates is that expenditures of a ministry will be managed and taken care of by a Permanent Secretary who is appointed as controlling officer. Now, when a matter like this happens, if, as it were, it is found that the controlling officer or any other office, even above the controlling officer, abused their authority, then disciplinary action is taken on such officers. And therefore, what you are indicating does not spare even the senior officers if at all they are found to have been wanting.
Let's move on to the leakage, which is a bigger story and almost overshadowing this theft at your ministry. What really happened? This is a big scandal. Not happened in recent times that an examination has been suspended and probably nullified.
Yes, before I discuss the issue of leakage, maybe just to create the context, you know, the education system per se has got certain objectives and the goals which under normal circumstances expects that those are achieved. Now, in the case of Zambia, we have an education system that emanates from early childhood education, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now, at each or at different levels, there are certain competencies that we expect that the learners should acquire. And therefore, to help us to understand whether those competencies have been reached, assessment is conducted. Now, this assessment is done in various forms. There is what is called continuous assessment, and there is the other one where you conduct examinations. You are aware that at grade 7, grade 9, and grade 12, we do conduct annual examinations. Now, again, the essence of these exams is to help the education system to understand if the learners have acquired a certain level of competency and skill. Now, the issue of leakages, you must understand that in the administration of examination, the government set up a body called Examination Council of Zambia. And that's the body that is mandated to administer examinations in the country. So every year they set questions, print them, and take them to the centers where the learners sit for those exams. And after the learners sit, they mark and ensure that the results are announced. So within that administrative system, indeed, you will note that every year when the Minister of General Education announces the results, if there were malpractices, that information is also relayed. And therefore, you are quite privileged to know that we've had instances of malpractice experienced, even in a number of past, exams. Now, this year, we noted a different feature in the sense that the paper was actually published on an online media. Now, that is an interesting element, particularly for government. And we therefore were determined, as directed by His Excellency the President, Mr. Edgar Chagwalungu, that the ministry does everything possible to get to the bottom of what transpired. Now,
I need to ask you, really, did you have to wait for I know we'll be saying an online publication, and we know where that thing was posted. Did you have to wait for Zambian Watchdog to publish that?
No, in fact,
it means the system had gone to sleep.
In fact, not. We didn't have to wait. Within
your ministry should have detected that before it was published, because the exam was only cancelled after it was published.
Well, within our own administrative system, through the Examination Council of Zambia, they keep a close watch, and also within the different levels within our education system, they keep a close watch on what is happening. Admittedly, with respect to mathematics paper 2, yes, there are some lapses you know, that happened within the different levels in the ministry, particularly at those levels where these records were stored before they were actually administered to the learners. And we are, you know, this year we have accurate information which is giving us a firm base on which we can take appropriate decision, both administrative as well as legal in terms of prosecution, because of the measures that we undertook as a ministry to try and redress this situation.
When you say you've got accurate information, what do you mean?
Well, basically what it means is that as far as that paper that we nullified, we were able to track it, you know, from the point where it left the examination council up to where it was delivered, and also way back to the examination council. So meaning that we have firm information and evidence on what we actually needed to understand.
This is a big problem, and by now we should know where to place the blame. Where is the blame? Who's taking responsibility for this? Is it Ministry of General Education? Is it Examinations Council of Zambia? Is it the teachers?
Well, generally, I'm sure the country is privy to the information that has been shared so far. I've seen that through the police, the spokesperson has highlighted to the nation, and also the Honorable Minister gave a ministerial statement in Parliament to brief the nation in terms of what has been found out and what other measures we'll be able to undertake. Now, in terms of the very specific issues, because of the nature of the issues we are dealing with, there are investigations which are ongoing. We wouldn't want to compromise the investigations, and therefore I wouldn't endeavor to delve in very specific issues and put, you know, blame either on this level or that level, because by so doing we'll compromise the investigations that are ongoing. So what I would simply say is that as government, we will bring the culprits to book.
People will argue that this is a simple issue. By now you should know where the leakage was.
Yes, we know. We do know. And this
where was
is
the
why,
leakage?
And this is why we are saying that measures are being undertaken to deal with the matter. Now, the minister did indicate that 77 centers had materials where they were tampered with in terms of mathematics paper 2. So we are aware about that 77 centers, the materials for mathematics were tampered with the intention to defraud. And we are also aware that in 248 centers, the materials were administered to the learners, and the reasons given for that was that communication was very difficult to reach those centers.
77 centers compromised. That's a big number.
Well, indeed, yes.
And I'm surprised you've not nullified the entire examination for grade 9s, because 77 for one paper, that's huge. And you would not be so sure only one paper leaked.
Well, in fact, what we did is that whilst we were looking at this mathematics paper that leaked, we also had an opportunity to ask the different officials at various levels to also check the materials that were in the custody. And therefore, we have information, and this is why government has taken the appropriate decisions which you are aware of.
What about the ones that were already written, that had already been written by the pupils? There's a high chance they could have been compromised too.
Well, if you put it in that context, but remember that that will be an assumption. We still need to... It is a fair
assumption, considering the huge number of centers that were affected by the mathematics paper too.
Agreeably, yes, it is a fair assumption. And within the examination system, there is a way in which Examination Council of Zambia does undertake measures if such a situation had actually occurred. I wouldn't go into those specific areas. Once again, we need to ensure that we have credibility of the system, and we also need to give confidence to the citizens, to guarantee that as government, which is true, we are in control, and we are doing everything possible to mitigate the occurrence of what we witnessed, and to stop the reoccurrence of any such issues.
It seems, P.S., this battle was lost a long time ago. There is information suggesting that some of the pupils could have had even marking keys with them. How did we reach those levels?
Well, that part of information that you are indicating, as I have indicated, the investigations are ongoing. Where government has that type of information, yes, it will use it to inform it in terms of taking appropriate decisions. However,
are you investigating the part that marking keys also leaked?
We are investigating everything. We are not leaving anything, without, following through. And where we have information, we will use that information to help us make appropriate
For now, it seems, Doc, that probably the administration part, which is ministry, is not in touch with the teachers. Because by now you would have known that examination leakage has been a growing problem, a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, as you are aware that on the one side, we have the administration system. But on the other side, we have the community. And learners, teachers, the workers, they live in the community as well. So it is expected that all of us, put our heads together within the community, because these things are happening firstly in the administrative system through the Ministry of General Education, and then migrating into the community. And therefore, what government is appealing to the citizens is that we need to reclaim our value system, so that when we see something wrong going on within the community, we put our heads together and stop such practices. And therefore, we expect that the community will come up and work with government to help it where there is information which will lead to us arresting this situation. And again, in the administrative system, indeed, we are empowered to take remedial measures, which we have taken and continue to take. So we wouldn't say that the battle is lost, as it were, because as a country, we need to continue to produce educated citizens. And therefore, we must strive to ensure that the system that we run is credible and can be able to produce the required results.
Genuinely educated people. But I was saying, you're fighting this battle alone. If you get to the teachers, headmasters and other school administrators, looks they've taken a laissez-faire approach. And one of the reasons they give is that when they arrest or rein in on pupils that have leakage, there's no support for them when they start appearing in court. And so they give it up. All they do is grab the leakage and tear it, and that's all.
Well, I hear you, Rebazio. But I think whilst we understand as a government that even if it were one center where we had materials tampered with, that's unacceptable. We note that here we are talking of 77 against 3,000 centers. However, having stated that, our intention is that not even one center should we have a situation where the materials are compromised. And therefore, we do know as a government that we have credible teachers. And these teachers are of good values, are upright, and they work with government diligently. However, we do note that we have teachers who are wanting. Now, as government, this is why we passed a law that created the Teaching Council of Zambia for purposes of regulating the practice of teaching and ensuring that certain values that are expected from teachers are adhered to, and therefore licensing the practice of teaching and continuing to build capacity of our teachers to ensure that they deliver quality education. As you are aware, Grevasio, teaching is a noble profession. And within the community, people value and uphold, teachers very highly. We should not lose that. We must reclaim that as a people and as citizens.
Where is the incentive for the teacher to report a pupil who has a leakage?
You see,
they know that, of course, they'll spend 1 year, 2 years going to court. And government's face is not even there. Not even your ministry's face to back them up, to give them comfort as they execute that assignment. So the easier thing is not to report at all.
Well, what I would say to such teachers is that let them have confidence that corrective measures are going to be done. And Grevasio, I ask you to just keep watching and see the directives which have been given. You have to understand that the government means well, and it will do whatever it takes to remedy the situation. Indeed, we respect the rights of our teachers, we respect the rights of our citizens, and we will take actions and measures that respect those. However, the culprits will be brought to book.
I want you to, you're speaking about giving confidence. I want you to speak to the public. They're watching, yes, the exams have resumed, but what has changed? What are the measures that you've put in place?
You see, one of the notable things that we've learned is that much of what we are seeing, we didn't see a reported break-in, as it were. So, meaning that much of it is within our control. So, it's those measures in terms of monitoring and evaluation which we believe that we were challenged in this instance. And therefore, it is our understanding that once we re-emphasize on that, what we see and what we saw is unlikely to happen. Particularly the measure that we took this year, there are lessons, and all the employees within the education system will develop and build that confidence that yes, government means well for the citizens of this country, and we want to see that quality education is delivered and people acquire appropriate competences to be able to move on to the next level of our education system.
Have you done a research to try and understand why there's so much demand on dependency on leakage by the pupils? It should be pointing to a deeper problem.
Well, maybe I think it could be a matter of speculation, as it were. However, in terms of research, we require to have empirical evidence that would inform us. But first and foremost, it's the issue that I did indicate. What is an examination used for? An examination is meant to help the education system understand that the appropriate competences desired in a learner have been acquired. And this learner then moves to the next phase, having demonstrated those competences. Therefore, the issue of leakages, when these papers that we produce, the certificates that we produced, are being used in the area of maybe employment or proceeding to further, studies, well, citizens may view that as something that they should acquire in order to progress. But our belief is that where those documents are used for such purposes, the learners and the citizens should acquire them appropriately and normally, because it is a test certificate and it certifies that what people are seeing there is basically what this person who has presented these materials has acquired. Now, in the case of a leakage, that does more damage. Firstly, to the moral value of the person who is involved in the leakage. What does it mean? What are you teaching your child? What are you teaching yourself? You have lied that you have acquired this competence, or that your child should acquire this competence, which you as a parent understands that your child has not. And therefore, one, you lie to yourself, you lie to the nation, and you even deprive the educational system to understand the education delivery that it is providing, because you are populating our results with these materials which are not genuine. And therefore, you are deceiving even the education system, which is a very serious matter for a country to progress and move forward. Because once the results are out, they should inform us in which areas. Firstly, if it's the competences of the teachers, if it is the way that we restructure our system, if it is the curriculum or any other, as it were. But if we have a situation where we can't fully understand what has transpired because of the leakages, then it's very unfortunate. And this is why we must address that issue and deal with it very decisively and comprehensively.
Are we going to see an overhaul?
Exactly.
When you say decisively,
yes.
This presents an opportunity to probably relook all this, the entire system.
Exactly. And we are very confident and very decisive and very firm, and we're very resolute in ensuring that this matter is addressed now and for the future. We must make sure that as a country we should stand firm and believe that when somebody presents a test certificate, we must believe that that person has acquired the relevant competences as displayed in that certification material.
There are proposals on the table. Partly people are proposing, why don't you use ICTs and in the distribution of these examination papers so that the leakage is minimized? An alternative is also proposed that why don't you use the Electoral Commission of Zambia system of delivering these papers a few days before, maybe 1 day or 2 days, using Zambia Air Force?
As a ministry, we continue to explore better avenues of administering the national assessments in terms of examinations. And yes, we are open to new innovation in terms of technology, and also exploring other ways such as the one that you highlight. I wouldn't immediately give you a firm answer to say this is the direction we'll go, because there may be a number of issues to consider, particularly when it comes to administering the examinations. Notably, you agree with me that the papers that learners write are quite a lot, and your suggestion, whilst most being appreciated, needs to be viewed and assessed on the basis of feasibility of what you suggest.
Let's look at tuition centers. They're also under the spotlight. People are concerned that, are you monitoring these tuition centers? Some of them that offer tuitions very, very late into the night, a day before the exam. You see pupils on the streets around 21 hours.
Yes.
Could this be partly to blame?
Uh,
Could it be a conduit of leakage?
Of course, we have noted, but I'm trying to balance my response here, taking into account the fact that there are investigations going on. But speaking generally about the tuition centers, it's a new phenomena that we have observed within the education system. What we used to see then was the issue of what was called APU. And this is where within our educational system, teachers used to assist the learners and in terms of mastering the materials that they were exposed to in the regular or normal schooling, as it were. And therefore, the ministry felt uncomfortable with that practice for various reasons, and therefore stopped it. But what we have seen now is that a similar practice has emerged, where within the communities, people are offering various services of that nature. And a number of those go to PACRA to register companies, and then they offer tuitions. What we expect as a ministry, and indeed as citizens, is that those institutions should do what we believe, if it means that helping learners to revise or go through the syllabus and therefore improve their acquisition of materials or mastery of materials, they should do it as and in a normal way. But when they begin to go into illegality, immoral issues, then we are concerned as a government. And that we cannot, allow. And you will be aware that, in fact, you are aware that we are revising the Education Act. So we will take the issue of tuition into account to ensure that we regulate it and we manage it sufficiently with the appropriate legal framework.
Now let's move on and probably look at another issue, curriculum development. And the concern, maybe not the concern, you've spent 33 million kwacha on learning materials, which you're about to distribute to all the provinces and trying to phase out the old curriculum. How far have you gone?
Well, I'm happy to indicate that we have made major strides in that area. As you know, we started in 2014 to implement the new or the revised curriculum. And in 2017, we had almost, I think, completed the part of introducing or implementing the curriculum. And at the same time, in a phased-up approach, because we had about 4 phases in which we were implementing this. In the same way, we endeavored as a ministry to acquire the learning materials that would help us to implement the curriculum. As I speak to you today, the last component, which is grade 4 materials, have started arriving at Zambia Education Publishing House, which is ZEF, and the other materials have been distributed. So we believe that we are on course in ensuring that the appropriate materials are also available to help our teachers to deliver the new curriculum.
The concern on the new curriculum, though, is that there seems to be a bit of instability in the process. Too many courses being introduced for the learners.
Well, Grevasio, that's an interesting subject you have raised, and indeed would require a lot of time to explore that particular issue, because there are a number of things that need to be taken into account, some of which, as you would have noted, when the country has a vision, like what we have now, Vision 2030, to become a prosperous middle-income country, there are certain things that we desire and certain things that we need to see. Now, education is pivotal to us achieving that. And therefore, we must review the curriculum to ensure that it is tailored to direct the country to achieve the desired intention. And therefore, we must relook at firstly the way the curriculum is structured and introduce certain elements like ICT, entrepreneurship, and the two-tier educational path where we introduce the skills level. Basically, it's to ensure that when the learners go through the education system, as they leave, they must have acquired those appropriate skills to help them to move on. And this is why, having reviewed the previous curriculum, we felt that we needed to strengthen it so that when somebody leaves the school, they can do some of the basic aspects and even establish their own companies, as it were, if that is what they desire to do. Hence, the need to review the curriculum.
Are you experimenting? Maybe that's the concern.
No.
You introduced ICTs. They've barely taken off. Lack of computers in schools. There was a recent announcement not too long ago about introducing agriculture, making it compulsory. Is the ministry experimenting? Are you consulting enough?
Grevasio.
Are you consulting the teachers?
You must understand that when you determine your destiny as a people, you must appreciate where you are starting from. And where you are starting from, it gives you a baseline, a starting point. And you should use that and see where you want to go. So, when you decide you want to introduce ICT as the case in point, of course, the reality will tell us that we do not have these tools in many of our schools. But we understand as a people that it is important if we have to make strides in our economic development. And therefore, we must invest in education. And we must take appropriate decisions and actions to support. But we should not shy away to appreciate and accept the situation that we are in, and consider it not as saying we shouldn't take these decisions. No, we must, and we should, and we will continue to take those decisions and be very resolute and convinced that we will get to where we want to go as a country and as a people. And we are determined, and we believe we are going to achieve. Already there are results that you can comfortably see. For example, as a country, we decided that we should teach our learners from grade 1 to 4 in the language of play. Now, the assessments that have been taken so far are suggesting a positive result, giving us confidence that that decision is appropriate and necessary. And we will continue to ensure that these policies and decisions that we take, we also conduct appropriate research so that we can review and make decisions that are premised on empirical evidence rather than using emotions or being influenced by external forces, other countries, by virtue of the fact that maybe there's some support which is coming. No. We must make sure that the decisions we are taking, we take them because we know where we want to go and we believe we'll get to where we are going.
Is it because of donors? Are donors funding our curriculum?
You see, the phenomena of donors is highly appreciated. We live in a global community, and therefore we have those friends of Zambia who come to the aid of Zambia, and we encourage that. However, as a people, we have decided where we want to go. And we believe that the support that is coming in should be tailored towards supporting where we want to go. And the decision in terms of where we want to go is for the people of Zambia. And the government will make that type of decision in consultation with the people of Zambia, as and when such decisions have to be made.
Now, you spoke about teaching pupils in their language of play, and maybe this is something you've observed, that technically the middle class and the upper class have exempted themselves from this provision because they're going to private schools that don't teach in the language of play.
You see, what you should understand is that the issue of teaching in a language of play is to assist the learners master what is delivered to them at an appropriate age, so that it prepares them for the future. Now, if those children you classify as in that grouping, if the language of play for their children is maybe English, and when they go to the private schools, they teach them in English, it means that, yes, they will acquire the skills, using that medium of instruction better than any other, if that were to be the case.
Let's look at human resource in the Ministry of Education. You still seem to be lagging behind. We still have the pupil-teacher ratio, which is very unbalanced. Up to date in urban areas, in some of the urban area schools, you find 65 to 70 pupils in one class.
Yes, indeed. That is as it is in certain schools. Now, given that that's what we are confronted with, I would indicate that, in fact, the government desires to do more. You will not, and in fact you have heard, His Excellency the President, Mr. Edgar Chagwarungu, refer to this concept of not leaving anyone behind. Now, what His Excellency desires and what he has directed is that children should be given an opportunity to go to school, to access education at an appropriate age. And they should be given that opportunity and chance. And this is the desire. And this is why the government wanted to ensure that the Bill of Rights was passed, so that when we are looking at education, we are dealing with issues of universal access to education. Now, if that would have been done, and continuing forward, even now as the case is, His Excellency has directed that we put more resources as a country in education. Now, doing that will give us an opportunity to ensure that children who require early childhood education are given an opportunity. The levels of teacher-pupil ratio you highlight, predominantly it's found at primary school level. Now, in terms of access at primary school level, we've reached about 99%. At early childhood education, we are at around 16%. Secondary school education, we are approximately somewhere around 40%. Now, what this means is that we still need to expand our education system, both in terms of space and also in terms of the teachers. We need to train more teachers, in not just in numbers, but also in the appropriate disciplines. Field. Yeah, which will enable us achieve what we are hoping to do as we continue with the development agenda. Talking
about training of teachers, you had a very strange occurrence or phenomenon that happened where you had to re-advertise to recruit teachers into training colleges, would-be teachers into colleges. Ideally, you would have these school leavers rushing to train as teachers. Where was the problem?
Well, yes, indeed. This year, we noted there was information from the heads of our colleges, the principals, who indicated to us that when they ran the adverts and they conducted the interviews, what they observed is that the numbers of people who were turning up to undertake the interviews and indicate intentions to enroll had reduced. And therefore, we appropriately asked them to extend the period for that. So as for the reasons why this phenomena was observed, it's something that, again, would require further, review and even research to understand, are we seeing a change in our children in terms of their interests? Where do they want to go to attend tertiary education? So if that is the case, we will be informed, and this is why we want to engage the various tertiary institutions, universities, colleges, to undertake, some of the appropriate research, which we feel that would help us to understand some of these new phenomena that we are observing.
Now, let's look at teachers and their qualifications. Not too long ago, we had the Teaching Council of Zambia undertaking a very extensive exercise of verification of teachers' results, and a good number of teachers were found wanting. Has this issue been closed? Has it been dealt with?
No, because you see, the registration of teachers is an ongoing process. For those who presented themselves to the Teaching Council of Zambia, for purposes of registration, as you are aware, if you want to practice as a teacher, you must register. So those gave us an opportunity to review the certification that the respective teachers were presenting. And indeed, we learned that some of them were presenting materials that were not legal or legally obtained, as it were. And therefore, this is a continuing process. The Teaching Council of Zambia will continue to monitor and review. Now, as a ministry, we are working on measures to improve our information management by introducing, technology. So somewhere next year in June or July, we would have introduced this application that will link various institutions, colleges on the one hand, the ministry, and the Teaching Council, the Teaching Service Commission. What we are desirous of doing is that from the time a child enters our early childhood education system, whether in the private or in the public, we give that child a unique identifier and capture that information electronically and begin to monitor the progress of this child, including the assessment that will be conducted. And if this learner moves from one school to the other, we'll be able to track that electronically, and we'll be able to know which teachers have taught this child. Even when the child progresses to secondary, university, we will continue to monitor using that unique identification. And therefore, as they graduate, we already have captured that information. We believe that by introducing and implementing this measure, whilst working with Smart Zambia, we will be able to mitigate a number of shortcomings, including, of course, the issue of learners presenting wrong certification.
Forged document.
Yes, because we would have immediately known, when the college that examines the learner or the university, they will upload that information onto this platform, which will be linked to the ministry. And therefore, all of us will be able to view based on the rights given to each and every one of us in terms of accessing this platform. Okay. And therefore, we'll be able to be making appropriate decisions. And we'll control a number of things that currently depend on manual systems in terms of verification.
Now, as we close, I want you to look at the issue of infrastructure. I know the ministry has been building primary schools, secondary schools. Where are we in terms of progress? I know we have a deficit when it comes to secondary schools.
Yes, at the secondary school level, if I may be allowed to start with that, we have a deficit in the range of 2,000 schools. We have about 900 secondary schools. We have about 9,000 primary schools. So in order for us to increase the uptake of learners, to levels may be moving towards 80%, 90%. We need to bring on board this quantity of schools. Agreeably, it would demand a lot of resources on the Treasury. We have begun and have continued to implement projects. You will be aware that there are about 115 secondary schools, at various stages of completion, which started some time back, which we are continuing with. And we just recently, this year, started about 82 low-cost model secondary schools with support from the World Bank. We are hoping that these will give us that experience in terms of understanding, firstly, the model that we are demonstrating, and secondly, the cost, which will help us to upscale in terms of going forward to build much of the infrastructure that we need.
Primary school level?
At primary school level, yes, we also continue to expand the scope in terms of access, because you are aware that when you do a pupil classroom ratio, you see that the numbers is 1 to 60, as you highlighted in some of the schools. It means that in those schools we need to increase the available space. So even at that level, we are continuing to provide the infrastructure, as a strategy within the ministry.
Dr. Phiri, it's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was Dr. Felix Phiri, Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Education. We'll be back next week sometime. Pleasant viewing.